This orientation placed the Capitoline Hill at the center of the map and showed it from an advantageous viewing angle, something that a north orientation would not have allowed, for in that case, this highly scenographic bit of Renaissance urban planning would essentially be turning its back to us. Why is this significant? Well, the Campidoglio, as it is known, was one of the city's most symbolic sites, center of ancient Rome's government and modern Rome's revival. More to the point, its architectural centerpiece was the Palazzo del Senatore, where Abbondio Rezzonico, the dedicatee of Vasi's map, held high ceremonial office as the topmost civic magistrate. Here is Pompeo Battoni's portrait of Abbondio with the Campidoglio and the Palazzo del Senatore in the background. At left, the goddess Roma, or that is, a statue of the city's namesake goddess that actually stood in a niche at the base of the same Palazzo del Senatore, extends the sphere of dominion in Abbondio's general direction, almost as though anointing him. In the map, Vasi similarly placed the city at the senator's feet by means of his dedication, even as he granted central visual prominence to the seat of Abbondio's authority. This is a classic instance of a map symbolizing power over the territory represented. It was a flattering, solicitous gesture on Vasi's part, shrewdly calculated to win favor. But turning back now to consider the map and prospetto together, I want to point out one final affinity that transcends obsequiousness. Writing about the prospetto, John Pinto has observed that one of the most striking aspects is the way in which Vasi situates the city within its natural setting. As we have seen, this is precisely what he does in the map as well, in a manner that subtly attunes the two works, belying their more obvious differences. Overall, if we fail to recognize the map's relationship to the larger body of Vasi's work, our understanding of it is impoverished, much as he felt the city was impoverished when deprived of its connection to the world around it. Vasi's map brings together important features of his corpus in general. In important ways, it is a quintessentially Vasian work. Is it what he should be best remembered for? No. It's not an alpha map, it's distinctly beta. And Vasi produced some alphas in other categories of imagery. But should the map be consigned to the dustbin of history? No again. It has value as an integral facet of Vasi's larger project to represent the full variety and richness of modern Rome. In his own words, much invoked today to generate a Roma Visuale. Thank you. Questions? Ben?
Do we have evidence that he had Cartaro's map, or would have it was it's such a surprise?
Cartaro's map. I haven't seen any direct evidence, and granted, I haven't been working on this that long.
It would have been a 200-year-old map that he was.
Yes, but it's still around today. I think that these things were known, and they were, and also I think this harkens back to Mario's talk, the same way there was that corpus of architectural prints that people referred to, sometimes even unconsciously. But I think he knew it. I think he must have known it.
Yeah, Cartaro is not that rare.
Yeah. Jim.
Would you say there's then a line, a lineage that goes from Cartaro to Falda, or the Falda Piccola?
I personally think, Cartaro is someone who I would love to work on more, because I think that Cartaro, arguably more than someone else I've worked on, namely Bufalini, was extremely formative for later imagery. And I think that that's one of those, the first of those, what I've heard you refer to as a paraline plan, what I call a perspective plan, and that's what actually Vasi calls this, a pianta in prospettiva, which is actually a kind of paradoxical term. But I think that Cartaro, along with Duperrac, were the major innovators in that regard. And so how much you judge their influence is how, they're, again, none of the works I've been showing you are slavish copies, right? They might take inspiration, but I definitely see a Cartaro as being a kind of forefather to Reuterwalder, Maggi, others I didn't show today, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. John?
Just on the subject of the orientation, I absolutely agree with you that it was desirable for him to have this orientation because, of course, it went with the prospetto. But reaching back to the Cartaro example, it does seem to me that there's another theme here, and it's the theme that emerges very powerfully in the inscription to right and left of the dedication of the prospetto, the description from Marshall. From this site, it is appropriate to admire the lordly hills of Rome and all of its monuments. And I do think that that was seen as a justification for this viewpoint. The fact that it was elevated also facilitated these Victorian perspectival views, but it also, I think, lent a certain authority. And while it might not have had the advantages seen from a contemporary perspective of a more rational and scientific orientation, it had that very potent element of classical authority.
Absolutely.
And I would factor that into.
I think that is that kind, the cachet of the ancient sort of sanction, I think, is absolutely a factor to take into account. What's interesting, however, is the place where you also, and I think that it certainly entered in, where you really see this orientation take hold is in pure plans. Marliani, as well as Buffalini, I think, and then everyone uses it. And so I think that there are a lot of different elements that come in. You often have people ask, well, does it have some sort of connotation with East being at the top? And I personally think it's entirely demystified from that, because East isn't at the top. East is sort of at the upright corner, which kind of defeats the purpose. It's much more arbitrary, almost. So there's something inherent in the city, its topography, an idea associated with a geniculum, etc. Vinny?
I learned a lot from this in John's remark. I mean, I was thinking, I'm sure it's wrong, about some sort of perhaps professional jealousy of wanting to do an homage back to Falda rather than Noli, the way Piranesi flipped totally upside down in the Campo Marzio. He took the exact Noli scale, small map, used it but tipped it upside down, and I thought maybe this guy too was
thumbing his nose.
Doing the same, thumbing his nose at Noli, but I think these other reasons make more sense.
Yes, Jim?
I would offer a graphic interpretation of this orientation. The fact that the Via Flaminia Corso is perfectly parallel to the edges of the map and stabilizes the city
I agree entirely.
On the plate.
And I thought also the river. This is as straight as you can get that river as a kind of weight anchor. I agree. The Via Flaminia.
That's accidental.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And the only other factor I would add to that, because I think all of these have validity, the Vatican. And this is something that I think, Kelly, you pointed out also, you came to this independently also. But the Vatican is foregrounded in this case, and that's also probably not accidental. Yes, Akibo. And then I should.
So the fact that he mentions, this might be one information that I could have gotten if I had paid attention here. So, the fact that he mentioned his store and other works suggests that this was sold independently.
Yes.
And does it also suggest that it was sold in places that was not his shop or given to his patrons or something like that?
I'm not actually sure how that would have operated in this case. This is where I'm not always sure if my 16th century knowledge translates that well, but I think he really had the exclusive. These were his plates. He was selling them, and I don't know, maybe Jamie, if he had any kind of, I'm sure he gave some away the same way he gave away dedications right and left. He was very, very shrewd and a wonderful businessman.
Yeah, but I mean, imagine also not just selling them, but if you give something to somebody and then somebody else sees it in that person's house, then there's always that note reminding you where you can have it.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. We're going to take a 5-minute break to fill up the fourth, and you can have a little something to nibble on in the back of the room, and then we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Really?